blessed that I am left-handed, even more so when you consider that I play baseball and am in fact a left-handed pitcher. This is my in-group, this is my story. Ever since I can remember, baseball has been my biggest passion, always playing, practicing, and watching it. I've always had a love for baseball, and as I have progressed with the sport, I have begun to realize that I have a special ability to pitch, and this was greatly helped by my left-handedness. This talent of mine has taken me to the point where I was able to attend university because of my pitch ability. A good left-handed pitcher is one of the most highly valued and useful assets a team can have because of their ability to totally disrupt everything that the hitter sees. Because I am so fortunate to possess this ability, I wanted to explore what being a left-hander in relation to baseball and other sports meant. As you will see, being a left-hander goes beyond the realm of sport, but affects personality traits and characteristics, which of course can affect one's ability to perform in the diamond, court, or field. There isn't enough research on this topic, which makes my personal experience vital and important to this conversation. Growing up left-handed was probably not much different than growing up right-handed. The only two things that really stood out were using scissors and writing. Scissors are made for right-handed children, therefore I could basically never use them, and writing I would always smudge my hand when I would write on a page. When I first started playing baseball and people figured out I was left-handed, I would always get asked, "Are you a pitcher? Are you a pitcher?" It's assumed as being a lefty that you have to be a pitcher. Turns out that I did become a pitcher. However, this does not make me any better than anyone else, and I do not get priority on the field. I still have to work just as hard, if not harder than everyone else, and the coaches are going to play whoever's best. Now, let's talk about some background about baseball. According to the author McManus in 2010, left-handers make up only around 11 to 12% of the total population, a clearly very small portion of the population. The percentage of lefties in baseball is around double that. Here at Wake Forest, out of the 35 men on the roster, there are only 7 of us that are left-handed, or 20%. These numbers are very similar to the major league teams who average around 8 lefties on their team. If we are going to get even more specific, there are 4 left-handed pitchers at Wake, which equates to 20% of the total roster. In the MLB, around 39% of pitchers are left-handed, according to Drew Stewart, a sports commentator, and I think this makes for an interesting comparison.
Left-handers also have advantages in other sports. Norbert Hagman, a professor of sports psychology in Germany, found that left-handed tennis players were better at swinging a racket because of the way their brains work. In other words, because their brains are able to make their bodies use the left hand, tasks like swinging a racket or bat become easier. Volleyball players that are left-handed also have certain advantages while on the court. Defenders might get confused when seeing a commonly non-dominant hand swat the ball over the net. Seeing the player use their opposite hand can influence how an opponent defends. For example, athletes generally get used to defending other righties, but are forced to think harder when defending a lefty, which gives the lefty an advantage since they surprise the defender. Volleyball players rely heavily on anticipating moves and reading their opponents. In addition, left-handed players basically mimic what right-handed players do, but to the opponent it looks like everything is happening in reverse. Therefore, this can really fool their opponent and at times give them a huge advantage on the court. How does this relate to baseball? Well, the action of spiking a volleyball and throwing a baseball look very similar. Just like left-handed volleyball players, left-handed pitchers basically do everything in opposite of right-handed pitchers. The perception of the hitter is totally in reverse, as are other things such as the angle that the ball comes in and the movement of the ball on different pitches.
Left-handed batters also have a significant advantage in baseball. According to Washington University in St. Louis aerospace engineer David Peters, the biggest advantage has to do with the angle of the ball. 3/4 of pitchers are right-handed. A right-handed batter has to look over his left shoulder and the ball is coming at quite an angle. The offset of your eyes gives you depth perception, so when you're looking over your shoulder, you've lost the distance between your two eyes quite a bit, so you've lost that 1/10 of a second to see the ball.
For example, when a left-handed pitcher throws a two-seam fastball, the ball is going to tail away from a right-handed batter. If a right-handed pitcher were to throw the same exact pitch, the ball would tail into the right-handed batter. The difference of how the ball moves totally disrupts the vision of the hitter.
Now let's take a look and see how being a left-handed pitcher has helped David.
In terms of the recruiting process, being left-handed definitely did help, especially as a pitcher. Coaches love to recruit pitchers, and as my coach said, you can never be too drunk on left-handed pitching, meaning they're willing to recruit as many as possible. That being said, I still have to be good enough to get recruited in the first place.
As David noted earlier, being left-handed also has an impact on personality. Let's take a look at that now. In 2010, scholars Grimshaw and Wilson conducted a study on lefties' personality with regard to what are known as the Big Five personality traits: extroversion, openness, conscientiousness, emotionality, and agreeableness. They noted that independent t-tests comparing participants who reported on beliefs versus stereotypes indicated no significant difference between them on any factor, indicating that there is a stereotyped belief that lefties have a certain type of personality compared to the right-handed people. For example, a lot of people think that lefties are more open and quirky than righties, which this study confirmed. Left-handed pitchers also often have a reputation for having a unique personality and are considered to have a lot of quirks and seem clueless. However, there is no known science to understand why these personality traits occurred, as scientists are still trying to find a way to study this. However, this is where personal experience becomes important.
Well, I'm very, very superstitious, and most right-handed pitchers are not. For example, back in high school, our colors were red, white, and blue, and my sophomore year, I was playing against Kell High School, and I had my first loss of the whole entire season, like about halfway through, and I was wearing a red undershirt. And from that point on, for the rest of my 3 years in high school, I never wore a red undershirt to practice or in a game. And something I do in the games is I take my hat off and put it back on in between every single pitch of every single game.
Historically speaking, many left-handed children have been forced to switch to be right-handed when learning to read and write. This could be challenging for them when they are young, as they're forced to do something unnatural. Grimshaw and Wilson noted in their research there has also been discrimination towards lefties, as products in scissors, notebooks, and desks has not been available for those who are left-handed. They are also thought to be evil associated with the word, as the Latin word for left is sinister. However, today, lefties are looked at it pretty positively. For example, the three recent presidents of the United States, Barack Obama, Bush, and Clinton, have all been left-handed. According to Christina Swear of the Wall Street Journal, some people think that lefties are smarter, more creative, and had advantages over righties in areas like sports. Swear notes that their success is dependent on being a minority, since righties are less familiar with competing against their counterparts in areas such as sports. Thus, it takes them a few extra seconds to make their decisions and react. Additionally, in the labour market, left-handed males earn 15% more than their right-handed counterparts, which may also support a 1999 study noting that left-handed men are better at divergent thinking or developing new ideas to solve problems. Why are people left-handed, you might ask? Well, there are two hemispheres of the brain muscle that control the contralateral, which means the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, and vice versa. Generally, people process language on the left side of the brain, and thus write with their right hand. However, for those who are left-handed and have the recessive gene that causes them to think differently. According to the Wall Street Journal, there are three kinds of lefties. Natural lefties, who process language in the right hemisphere and thus write with their left hands. Natural righties, who are experiencing some kind of injury in their early development, causing the right side of the brain to take over for some of the functions of the left hemisphere. And learned left-handers, who process language in the left hemisphere but began using their left hand for some reason at an early age. The result for learned left-handers is using both sides of their brain, and many people believe that these are the most successful. Examples of this include Bill Gates, Obama, and Oscar de la Hoya.
In conclusion, there is such thing as left-handed personality, and left-handed pitchers can have an advantage on the field due to the messed up perception they give the batters. To further the conversation, I think more research should be done on the topic, as well as possibly in other sports like basketball and lacrosse, and research handedness in their sports.